What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Supercoach Experience. Another round in the books. Only four more to go after this one. I'm here with the legend himself, Tim Moody. He's been in the reserves for a couple of weeks, just training up, getting back up to speed in the books. But he's been training hard.
Where I
He's back
belong, I
in
tell
here.
you what, bloody hell, the performances I've been putting out week after week is just shocking. Send me back to Reggie's.
No, never, mate. Never, mate. He's in the wings, ready to get back into first grade and be captaining the side. So, how are you, Tim? And how'd you score this week?
Yeah, look, I'm a little disgruntled. I wouldn't say I'm as disgruntled as Ricky Stewart was after his team's performance and the way he sort of carried on, but I guess I have the luxury of sort of a bit of a breather and not having to go straight into a press conference. So, look, 12.58. It's very, very under par. It's seen me lose majority of my cashy leagues, and more importantly, it's going to see me probably drop out of the top 100, I think. I mean, 55th going into the round, but I've seen some pretty big scores out there and a lot of them. So seems like everyone's on at least 1350 plus.
Yeah, and I mean, tell me a bit about that. Obviously, you looped Munster. What were the key performers in your side, and what were the key ones that kind of undid the round?
Well, it's probably fair to say I only had five players turn up. So Drinkwater scored me 97 today. Hines 112 I brought in this week. Tedesco 99. Latrell Mitchell 152 and Cam Munster, that massive 147 which I looped. Happy with that. Copying the AA didn't hurt me because I took a 19 and the guy I would have played instead would have been Taylor May, which has scored 40. So it didn't cost me much there at all. But yeah, apart from that, nearly every other player I had would just stunk it up. Like Reed Marnie for 27. That's just ridiculous for an 80-minute hooker. Tago 36 is underwhelming. Holmes 35, very underwhelming. Talakai 25. Like I was really looking forward to this matchup for the Sharkies and thought it was going to be a whopping score for both Mulatalo and Talakai, but they both underperformed. So, yeah, just a shocking week across the board for the Valley Army. And, yeah, lucky there's 4 weeks to go because I'm going to need them to crawl back some sort of respect.
Yeah, and I think they will. I mean, this is kind of a surprising round, especially for your team. I mean, you look at the way the Cowboys performed today and the points that Drinkwater got, and one of those tries goes to Val, and you're cheering, and same with Reed Marnie. They towed out my Manly side, and 27 is very, very unlucky. I mean, the Mulatalo thing is a bit more of an issue, and we'll get onto that because I think there's been a consistent over the last 4 or 5 rounds of him scoring under what he's potentially supposed to, but still, I mean, it's a very, very difficult round, especially if you didn't have one of the big dogs. So your Latrells, it really kind of capped your score. So you were quite lucky you had all pretty much all the big ones, and I mean you avoided the Tarpanay injury, which is also good because I'm sure what you're trying to save trades. How many trades do you have if you're willing to disclose?
One left.
One left.
Yeah, I've got one left, and that's just an insurance trade. I would have liked to have brought Dewey in this week, and I'm sort of glad I didn't because he didn't really do what I thought he was going to do this week. He only scored that 50, and the Tigers were probably a bit surprising considering they put on 2 good performances the weeks prior and then were unable to sort of back that up this week. Look, I don't know. I'm tempted to sort of use that extra trade now just because I feel like I've got to do something because there's a lot of weaknesses in my side. Obviously, I didn't realize there was that many weaknesses, but maybe I need to sort of strengthen that up with a solid like Cam Murray sort of player or something who's consistent, who you can get a big one out of him, but also a solid, hopefully 70 out of him most games. But I don't know. I'm very thin on troops, so going to go to the drawing board this week and work out what's the best idea. How'd you go, Maxi?
So I had a pretty good round, and I was quite fortunate with my trades. The whole week I was on Cleary to Joe Tarpanay, and it's kind of it's all positional. So I was talking to Robbie last week and saying, should I go Tarpanay or Dewey? and he said Tabane if you're trying to consolidate your rank, or Dewey if you're in like a bit lower, and
Yeah.
that kind of resonated with me. So. And it's not necessarily the Dewey move that really advanced me. So I got 1346, but my trades were I went Dewey in for, I believe it was Deloise Hoyter, and I went Nathan Cleary to Cam Murray. And so I was very happy with those trades. And I suppose I've got one trade left after this round. But I mean, anytime you avoid an injury, especially for a player where you're trading him in at 700k, and you're thin on trades, it's kind of a win. So whilst the Dewey move wasn't necessarily the home run that I thought it was when I thought he was going to go up against
Avoiding
the
the other way, yeah.
avoiding the other way really well was good for me. So, I mean, I'm in the 5,000, so I think 1346 will get me, get me up amongst, the 4,000, 3,000, and yeah, I'm in the same predicament as you. Do you use that last trade and potentially go for a point of difference? I mean, the good thing about Murray is, and we'll get onto him later, is he's quite a pod. I think he's under 10%. So, do you use that trade and potentially, when someone goes down, you have to try and work out what happens, and you've got
the thing about Murray, just why it's on
bench.
my head, he was probably a better trade in this week because he had that nice draw and match up this week. Like this was their only decent game that the Rep Bunnies had. The rest of them are going to be tougher. So as good as Cam Murray is, it'll just be a lot harder for him to score as well as he did this round. So yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily him that I'd be targeting myself, but he's definitely still a good super coach option, even though it's a tough draw.
Yeah, and I think that we can kind of apply that brush towards the other South assets too. I mean, I'm quite, concerned about Cody, up against the tougher matchup, especially, this week he didn't score anything special. So, but we'll get into that when we get into the Souths game. So let's get into the recaps. Thursday night, first game of the round, we had the Chooks and the Broncos. Relatively good game for the Chooks. I mean, they might be back. We had Kiri with a 101, Teddy with a 99. Angus Crichton came up really well, had some good updates coming in, so 96 for him. Butcher, for those who've held on, 94, and Sawala came back for those who brought him in with a 70. On the opposing side, we had Payne Haas with a 65, Ezra Mann with 61, which is good for those who held him, and otherwise Kurt Catewell and Corey Oates with roughly about 80-ish. So, I mean, the big talking point for this game, I would think, is, the Roosters played really solid football. People brought in Joseph Sawali and Daniel Tupou. I mean, Tupou, the latter with the 35, is a bit of a disappointment. But are you quite comfortable for the rest of the season playing all your Chooks assets? Do you think they'll have a good run into the finals, or are you quite concerned about them going forward?
I've only got Teddy and Manu, and because they're pretty good individual players, I'm pretty happy to play them week after week. I mean, 48's fine for Manu. It's not what you want from him, but even in an average week, you'll take that. The thing I just thought about this game was just, it was so fast. The Roosters were just like hitting the ball up, playing the ball so quick. I was like, what the hell is this? I haven't seen this before. It was like a new brand of footy. But I feel like the Broncos kind of matched it in the way they were playing. It was pretty full on. But yeah, I was pretty impressed with the way that some of those guys that I don't have went, such as Sawali, Crichton, Kiri, who's not really relevant, but Sawali was like out of this world, man. He was just running the ball and was like he just wouldn't stay still, and he was like moving about like 10 meters after, like he'd get tackled and just be shaking himself that hard that he'd move about another 10 meters forward. It was crazy. I don't know what he's on, but I want some.
Yeah, I mean, he's an absolute talent, and I just don't know. I mean, I can't wait to see how good he's going to be in years to come, because if he's playing this well now, mate, his ceiling is sky high. He could well be the best player in the league in 3 or 4 years. And I mean, it's great to have an asset like that. I mean, especially for those who held on to him, I'd be really encouraged by what I'm seeing. I know Tim, the other Tim from the 360 podcast, he brought him in at his peak and was quite disappointed with his score last week. And I wouldn't be too discouraged. I know Roosters don't have the easiest run, but anytime you got someone like him in your team, it only takes a play or two for him to burst out. So I'd be encouraged, and I completely agree with you about the play of this game. It was ridiculously fast, and it favours, your Kiris, your Teddies, who play really well with quick play the balls, and it's great for the Roosters going forward. So I wouldn't have any qualms about playing their assets going forward. Even a Daniel Tupou, who as I said, didn't score that well this week. I'd be confident starting them and playing them, especially they appear to be gaining that confidence, that quick play that they pride themselves on. And they've got the Cowboys next week, and they've got Melbourne in round 24, but they've got a good match with the Tigers in round 23. So, I wouldn't be too concerned about playing them going forward, given their performance against, potentially a top 4 side in the Broncos. So well done to them. Which brings us on to the Friday night games. We had the Melbourne Storm versus the Titans. A lot of people were touting this up, saying Captain Cam Munster, and they were paid off for that. 147. Munster at fullback is absolutely golden for Supercoach. Absolutely incredible game from him, and it looked so easy. So fantastic for him. Harry Grant came back. Good for those who own him with a 97. Cooper Johns with a 96. Going to someone like a Brandon Smith, 56 is pretty all right for him if you had to play him. Disappointing though for Jerome Hughes. He was one of the most traded in this week. Him and Tarpanay, both some of the most traded in players this week. So very unfortunate.
I think the news on Jerome Hughes is pretty good, though. It looks like it might only be 1 or 2 week thing, not a season thing. So that's better than, him being scratched for owners altogether.
Yeah, and it looked very rough on field, so you would have thought the season's done. So, if you can cover him for a week, 2 weeks, obviously he's a hold. I think, most of the players have 2 or 3 trades. You can't really, you can't have the luxury of trading him at this point in the season, but it's good news for those who went him. At this point in the season, the last thing you want is one of the players you bring in for an injured and Nathan Cleary to get injured themselves. So, encouraging at least slightly for Storm owners. I suppose the key talking point here is Harry Grant back with a 97. There was concern with the attacking stats last week about him potentially not being a trade-in. Is he back to being the best hooker in the game? And did he ever leave?
Oh, yeah. You always want to have him over any other hooker. But then, Cookie looked pretty good this weekend as well, too. I didn't check his final score, but what was it? 94. So matching him, pretty much right there. I thought Cookie's performance looked better on eye test than Grant's, but I would probably still prefer to have Grant. I'm stuck here with Marnie punching out 23s. But that's what happens when you sell all your guns and try to make some crazy moves over the buyers. But I also want to give it a shout out to Nofo. I thought, even though he didn't end up crossing the line for them, scored pretty well in base. He's got a score of 48. I think if he can just find 1 or 2 tries, he'll be looking like he's going to ton up, So good buy if people got on him still, I think.
Yeah, and 2% of sides. We've always had faith in Nofo's base stats. Now on the Storm side, he's going to have some games where he's going to cross over for 2 or 3. So, it's hard with the amount of trades that we do, but he's a massive pod option. And if you do have the luxury of bringing someone like him, they've got a pretty difficult run home with Penrith in round 22, and Broncos, and then Chooks and Para. It's not really a great run for the Storm, but if Melbourne Storm are in form, the runs don't really matter. So one to think about, and I think he'll drop a little bit in price, around 470k. So you can probably go most centre wings to him. So good looking and a good shout for a pod move. On the other side of the park, we had the Titans with AJ Brimson with a 67, who was part of your team, I think, for a whole 4 hours before you moved him on.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks back.
It's a smoke. It was a lot of smoke.
That's why we love you, Timmy. Brian Kelly, centre wing of Goods Plus 61. I suppose the key talking point here is David Fafita. I didn't play him this week, which is kind of ridiculous, considering a player like David Fafita.
I don't think it is that ridiculous. I was pretty close to resting him, and 57. You'd be happy enough to leave that out most weeks. So I played him just because my squad's pretty thin. But yeah, I don't think he'd scored more than 50 points against the Storm in any other game. So it's probably a pretty good leave out more often than not if you were to do that.
Yeah, and I mean,
He's not really doing the job, is he? Like for what we expect of him and what we've seen of last year of him. I'm sort of reluctant. I mean, you'll still take that 57, but I just think the side he's in just really doesn't allow him to sort of play his best footy at all, which is
yeah,
disappointing for us.
it's really disappointing, and it's disappointing. I think both as a footy fan and a super coach owner, because
Mm,
you want to see people like him. He's such an exciting player. He makes the game so entertaining. But obviously, we've been talking for a long while about how they use him. I mean, 57 against the Storm is actually a pretty decent score. And if you look at his run, which is kind of deceiving because they are the Titans and they are a bottom three side in the league, it's actually not that bad. They've got Manly, who again are out of form next week, but then they've got Dragons, Newcastle, and Warriors. So I won't be benching him for the rest of the season.
That's good
Just
news for him
because,
going forward. Fuck yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
and I mean, it's a positive in a round like now, and it's important to remember he is under. I think he's 12% or 11% owned, so still relatively point of difference. If he can just jag a try, albeit the way that the Titans play, and we know that despite the way the Titans have played, he's run himself into attacking stats. I think he'll be a good player going forward. So very lucky with that run, and hopefully we can get something out of him. But aside from that, nothing really too exciting in the Titans squad there. So next game, Manly. This was again they had to win, and unfortunately, we didn't come up trumps, and it kind of impacted from both a real life situation and a super coach situation. DC was brought in by many, even after his poor performances over the last couple of weeks. The Nathan Cleary move to DC was touted as a good trade, and it was just kind of a Barney with half the Manly team gone. Unfortunately, it seemed like half the Manly team wasn't playing on Friday night, which was very unfortunate. So DC only had a 32. From a good perspective, I mean, we had Jason Sarr with a 107. Ruben Garrick, as we spoke about previously in the season, Timmy, you said he'd be an absolute keeper even if Manly weren't hitting form, just because he runs himself into points, and you bang on point as usual. He's looking fantastic. Ola Kawatu with a 45. I suppose from a Manly side, now, I think that gets them out of the 8, and I don't think they'll make finals arising out of that. But are you concerned with, your Ollers, your DCEs? I mean, Garrick's kind of the exception. But are you concerned with those assets going forward, given how bad they played? I mean, I know they do have the Titans next week, but it's concerning when you have a game like this. And
They should play really well against the Titans next week, especially considering the last 2 weeks' results. I'd be positive about that. They got the Sharks after that, which is obviously a tough game for them. The Raiders, they should be sort of pretty equally matched with them. And then the Doggies, which is, Dogs are playing pretty good footy, but you'd think that they'd be able to score well in that game as well. But yeah, I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, DCE is obviously not performing as well as you'd want him to be. His 3-round average is probably somewhere between 35 and 40 points, which is really disappointing considering he was like turning up a bit there. But yeah, it seems like their back's against the wall. I don't know the maths on it. If they are they statistically a chance? They're probably more than statistically a chance. I think if they won every game, they'd probably get their way in there still.
Yeah, I think so. It's just very unlikely with the way all the other teams are playing, and I mean, you're talking about being 4 points behind the pack.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe if they, because I still think the Roosters will win a couple of there. They probably are gone, aren't they?
Yeah, but I mean, as you say, the mathematically, statistically out thing actually matters a lot, because as long as they've got a shot, I think Des will just continue to run them in. But as soon as they're kind of out, I think there's a slight concern that you're kind of battered.
The Tigers won the grand final in 2005, just being a statistical chance, coming in at 8th and then going on to win it. So who knows? Maybe you could do a Tigers in 05.
Oh, mate, it'd be a dream come true, but I think the likelihood of that is...
You'd either need Tommy to come back or maybe Harry, the bloke that beat him at the Corso, one of those two to come in and...
Yeah. I mean, Harry, if you're listening to this, mate, come. We've got a spot for you. We need you.
Extended squad. I think that cut-off pass, though, now, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. And I also think, like, from a Manly perspective and probably from a Supercoach perspective, I hope Tommy doesn't come back. I mean, if we don't make finals, it's probably a good thing. Rest him up. Come
Oh,
back
yeah, for
next year
sure.
when
Yeah,
when
no, I
he's
don't think
here.
he'll be back.
So always a good thing. And from the other side of the park, really positive from Eels. Here you had Gutho with the 127. Lane, I mean, there's so many players we can talk about here. Lane had a 104. Brown had a 98. IPAP with 61, not too great, but not too bad. I mean, let's just start with Gutherson. Moses out of the side, it looked like Gutherson was taking on that kind of, really taking on that ownership that Moses had in the side. If you had trades, would he be someone you're firmly looking at just because of the role
I
he's
don't know.
taking on for the side?
I do kind of like the fact that he becomes more relevant and, has more touches in the side because Moses is out. But I feel like he just really lifts against Manly being his old club. I think there might have been some sort of weird falling out. I don't know the actual story of what happened. He played 5 games for Manly, but he always lifts against them. He always kills it. So maybe that might just be I don't think he's going to score 127 again this year. And I think their draw's a little bit awkward as well. So... yeah, I'd probably stay away. I just really think that Lane and Dylan Brown have been a great combination for them, and they're something I wish I sold Brown recently because I wanted to get in. I think it was Drinkwater or Munster, which one I can't remember which one it was. I had to get both back in, but yeah, I kind of wish I'd sort of identified that pairing because they've been doing great together. Do you own either?
Yeah, no, I don't, and that was kind of the bummer from two different perspectives. Sean Lane's one of my favorite players. I loved him when he was at Manly. I don't kind of know why we let him go, but that side with Brown and Lane, and we spoke about it last week. Just being ridiculous. I mean, Lane still is under, I think, 7% owned. So, if you're a Lane owner over the last 3 weeks, I know Mikey is 91, 83, and now 104. I mean, you're laughing. And look with their run, it's a mixed run. They've got the Rabbitohs next week, but they have Bulldogs and in round 23 and the Broncos around 24, which is both decent kind of matchups. And then they've got Melbourne around 25. I mean, that's also another one to put in the pod conversation if you've got trades up your sleeve. From a Dylan Brown perspective, if you're a Dylan Brown owner and you went him over Cody Walker, I mean, you're laughing. He really, besides that try he scored, which is obviously an incredible try, it didn't appear to be like he was running it too much, but he just gets those base stats, the tackle busts, and I mean, 100 relatively easy. I'm quite concerned as a non-owner. Do you have Brown?
No, I sold him just
Sorry, yeah,
recently,
you
probably
sold
about
him. Yeah.
3-4 weeks ago for either, as I said, either Munster or Drinkwater. I sort of did a lot of rotation around the 5'8" halfback, fullback position around the
Yeah.
buys.
And you don't have Lane either.
No, I'd love to have both,
Sucks.
actually. Yeah, I think next year I'm going to be really focusing. I've learned a bit this year. I've had too many bloody guys that have chasing that ceiling. I think you want guys that have got ceiling but that insurance of the base as well. And players like Dylan Brown have that. And then, where I've gone with Drinkwater, who scored well the last 2 rounds, but, he's got those 30s in him that have hurt me quite a fair bit over this season as well. So, yeah, I want to try avoid players that have got 30s in them next year. That's my goal.
Yeah, and I think also from a second rower perspective, back in the day, it was kind of like you only got the base stat beasts, and you kind of didn't go with those people who have a 40 or a 50 base, like your Olakuatus and your Sean Lanes. I mean, I know their base has gone up a little bit this year, but it's also a case of mixing in those base stat beasts with those in a really solid attacking side. And if we've known for a while that the Eels left edge is just an absolute gold mine. Like we knew Ola. Just by the way he was playing earlier in the season, would just run himself into attacking points purely because of his role in the attacking side. So I think it's also a mix of that. That was kind of my concern with bringing in Sean Lane was I have Ola. He's one of those kind of needs that tries to get up. And I didn't want 2 of them. But it shows, if the attack's going well down that side, that there's no qualms of bringing someone like him in there. I mean, owners reap the benefits of that because it's fantastic and it's a good punt to have. I know Mikey's got him, so well done. to Mikey there. Bring us on to the next game, and we'll talk a bit about this one because there's a lot to chat about. Rabbitohs 48, Warriors 10. Latrell with a 152, and he was hooked, benched, I'll say, because the game was won after 60 minutes, and it could well have been worse for non-owners. As a Latrell owner, and I'm a non-owner, does a draw scare you, or are you kind of in a perspective where he's just such a talent, he's playing literally out of this world, that the draw doesn't really impact him too much?
Yeah, I don't think the draw impacts him too much. He doesn't have a great deal of touches compared to other fullbacks as well. But he really does pick his moments. He'll sort of just, linger around and wait for the moment where there's a bit of a breakdown. And then when he can take advantage of that, he gets the ball, and he always seems to rack them up at least a couple of times a game. And I'm pretty happy with him. And I was pretty surprised he got pulled so early. I mean, he was going to score at least 200 points, at least. If he had another 16 minutes at least to go, and that's the time of the game where players are buggered, and players like Latrell can really take advantage. So his real scoring opportunities got taken away there, which is, you'll take 150, but as a greedy super coach player, you kind of want to get, milk every last point you can out of your player. But it's probably a good thing going forward. He could have got injured in the last couple of minutes of the game, and then we wouldn't have him going forward. So I guess you take the points and have him for next week, so it's still good.
Yeah, and I mean it's such a common view to have. I mean, I remember the thing that it reminds me of is I used to be a big NBA fan, and I remember there was one game as a Chicago Bulls fan where we'd won the game already, and they still had Derrick Rose in the game, and I was kind of like, just rest him. Like, these guys play so hard, just put him off, wrap him in cotton wool, and he ended up doing his ACL, and that took a number of knee injuries. So it's a smart decision to kind of get him off. But I mean, also from a South's perspective, they were kind of coasting that second half just a little bit. They obviously, all the points scored in the first half. I mean, Murray was on, I think, 85 or something like that at halftime. Latrell obviously there too. You would have liked them to keep the foot going on the accelerator and really put a 50 bomb on the Warriors, but we can't be too greedy with a footette. They looked fantastic. So I mean, I'm completely share the view you have on Latrell. I just think, regardless of the draw, he's just going to end up in points. And despite the base stats, whenever he does get his hands on the ball, it's pretty much going to be an attacking stat. So you can't be too discouraged about that. I brought in Camaro this week, as we talked about before, 130. I was really happy with that one. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, the try assists were great. I think the first one that went to Ilias, I was quite fortunate about. There still was a lot for Ilias to do. I know we put him through that hole, but still, thank you to the Super Coach scorers for that one. We were talking about potentially him as a point of difference. So he's one of the ones where you are slightly concerned about the draw, if I'm not mistaken.
No, not so much. A little bit. He's not the type of player that gets hindered by the draw as much. I mean, I'd be more concerned about a player like Alex Johnson, who's on the, where they might not score as many tries in a match. So if they're not going to score 38 or 30 points or something like that, and they only end up scoring, 12 to 18 points, maybe he doesn't get any tries in that game. Whereas Murray's still going to take his hit ups. He's still going to find opportunities to offload and bust a few tackles and stuff like that. But I just think his scoring opportunities will be limited. You know what I mean? Better defenses will wrap the ball up more, less offloads, less tackle busts, less likely he crosses for a try, that sort of thing. But I'd still be happy to bring him in knowing that he'd comfortably get me, 70, 80, 90 points more often than not. But I just don't think there'll be too many more 130s to come, but I could be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Over the 4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, he's got good base, and the good thing about it is the draw's difficult. They're obviously playing for a lot. They're not on the beach just yet. So So that kind of plays in his favour. He won't get hooked or
Mm.
benched, or the minutes won't be limited. I think he'll be in the thick of it. But does the same reasoning that you said in regards to Murray, does that apply to Keon Kolomatangi? Because 93 this week looks
Yeah,
to
for
be the same
sure.
kind of a
Even
situation.
more so, probably, because I reckon Murray gets through more work and Kolomatangi more relies on attacking stats as well. But yeah, I'd be a little bit reluctant to play him. Maybe so he might be one of those ones you might leave out in some matchups, depending on how deep your squad is.
Yeah. So I mean,
Potentially.
that's probably a good thing we do to give initial guide to individuals. So they've got the Eels, Panthers, Cowboys, and Roosters. What of those four would you consider based on depth? Obviously, when we don't know team dependent, but
Mm.
assuming all things are equal, and he's one of your four reserves, which of those games would you kind of think really considerably about leaving him out of?
Well, I think Penrith have proven that they're still legitimate without their halves there. They've kept the Raiders to 6 points and won fairly convincingly. I feel like if the Eels were at full strength, I'd feel a bit more confident about them, but uh, they're still letting in quite a fair few tries. Obviously they beat the Panthers a couple of weeks ago, but that was with us having 12 men most of the game, even though they were in front prior to that happening. So I'll give them that. What were the other two matchups?
The Cowboys and the Roosters.
Yeah, definitely the Cowboys seems like one you'd consider maybe resting him as well. Like you'd expect to maybe get like that 38 to 50 points out of him or something like that. And if you can take that sometimes, but then you might have other players in your squad those weeks when Kolomatangi's matching up against like the likes of the Cowboys or the Panthers. And you might go, I'll play this guy. He's just got a better draw and it's way more chance he's going to cross, maybe get some more attacking stats. So, but look,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you have to mark him and scratch him to leave him out. If you've got him in your side, you'd be able to play him still. It's just you might be able to identify him as a sit those weeks and sort of try edge on your opponents that you're playing.
Yeah, and obviously this is dependent. A lot of people who aren't in the amazing Supercoach position that you are, Timmy, are just focusing on winning their cashies at the moment. So
everything's going to crap for me. I'm not going to be bloody winning my overall thing. I'm falling behind. I'm probably won't stay in the top 100, and my head-to-heads are going to shite. So yeah, I'm sort of like scattered, not really trying to focus on either. I'm just trying to do well. And it's just not working in
Oh,
general.
look. I mean, I can speak on behalf of pretty much everyone that's listening to this podcast right now or delayed, and say that I think everyone would want to be as highly ranked as you are. You obviously setting the bar very high because you want to go back to back, and I think you'll continue to go up in that manner. But don't under play how great your season's been to date. To be in the top 200 after winning it last year. I think you probably find it's one of the few times a winner has actually gotten as high as that after winning the season. I don't know what the stats are, but I still well in. So always important to remember where you set the bar, Timmy, because setting the bar at winning, you're most of the time
very
going to be
glass
disappointed.
half empty sort of gentleman, but look, at least I've got something in my glass at all.
Exactly. That's important to remember. Very important to remember. So on the other side of the puck, not really too much to talk about. Jack Murchie with a 78, Josh Curran with a 58, Reece Walsh with a 58. I suppose the important thing to note, I think, for someone like Josh Curran is he'll probably be really underpriced for next year, and we don't know how the Warriors are going to be looking, but he's someone we know. Can score well. I mean, you look at his first three scores. I think he averaged about 80 in the first 5 rounds, something like that. So have a look at these, and I think it's always very important, regardless of where your position is overall, what your head-to-heads are. Have a squeeze at underpriced players for next year that you might consider bringing into your team. I know it's still very, very early to plan that, but I think it's always interesting to kind of look at that because you start to get excited about potentially the new season coming in, who's going to start.
I'm already excited about the new season because I'm starting to struggle in this one, so I'm starting to look very forward. But yeah, it's I guess we've got to finish the job this year first, huh? 4 more weeks to go.
Yeah, for sure. But it's good because it means that, you're playing for next year, and that gap of time between obviously grand final and the new season starting, it'll be exciting. You can plan a little bit about who you're going to get in your side, and it's always good to have some footy to think about and discuss. So keep that in mind. And so that's what I think too. I mean, and Adam Fanua-Blake, he's very underpriced. I think if he can get back into some sort of form, and he'll be someone you can look at too. But we don't know how the Warriors are going to look. It's not a good situation if you're a Warriors fan. Now, which brings us on to
Match of the round.
quite a good, Panthers versus Raiders. I mean, this got overshadowed by the Ricky press conference, and I mean, I don't really want to spend too much time unpacking that. I think there's both sides are probably wrong in the grand scheme of things, especially if there's something there with Ricky's son. But
if it
we'll move
happened,
on.
if it's something you said or did when you were 12, then I think that should be not really taken into account and sort of held against him as an adult. But anyway, we'll move on for that.
Yeah, and look, as I said, we don't really know what happens, but I'm sure it will come out in the media and
But
stuff.
in Ricky's defence, I won't just be a Penrith goggler. I will say that coming into a press conference just after a game and having to speak and answer questions, it'd be a very difficult job. So, but I think he's got enough experience in the game to maybe have done a bit better there and to chose his words much better, I think.
Yeah.
We live and we learn. We all make mistakes. We're all human. I guess we can't sort of hold everyone too accountable and we don't want to crucify the bloke, but maybe just pull him up on it. Hopefully he doesn't do it again.
Yeah, and I think it's always important. And the thing about Ricky too is he's so involved with the players. He's one of those coaches who's always down the ground,
on the sideline. Yeah, he takes some hit ups.
He sees one of his players, Starling gets, I mean, we don't know whether it was intentional or not, but the kick out, he's very much about his players. He's obviously very high.
I think he was definitely kicking out and trying to get it. Like he knew that he was kicking out. There's no way that he would have intentionally kicked him, in the crown jewels. So no bloke does that. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Sorry, I'm just laughing at your reference to that. I was
trying to find a nice way to put it. I've been calling them kahunas, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was going to call them. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's another way to do it. But anyway, I think it'll all be fine. I think it's also, I mean, the key thing from this one, if you're a Penrith fan, and as you are, Timmy, and I know Mark is, a lot of people thought without the two halves, they would be just, they'd struggle a lot. And there were components of this game where they didn't look really as good as they normally do. But
of course,
Jamin and Sean, and especially Sean did a fantastic job. So, I mean, does this change? I mean, does this make you, I say, confident in the Isaac Tagos and Brian To'os for the rest of the season, or are you
not necessarily? It makes me. I'm still confident after seeing Penrith perform the way they did. I'm confident they can, do well enough running into leading up to the finals without Cleary and Lulua there. But I'm still very concerned about these guys. Tago seems like he's on and off. Like can get 30s out of him. We were very keen on selling him probably about a month ago until he started putting out a couple of 80s. But he's got these 30s in him sort of every second or third week. And then Taylor May's been just sort of underperforming and sort of going under the radar for quite a while until I think he sort of got brought to the forefront this week and everyone sort of realised, hold on a second, this bloke's been terrible. He's still taking those hit ups and stuff, but he hasn't found a try for Yonks, so it's unfortunate. I'm a bit nervous about when do I play them and if I leave them out, because playing for the Panthers, I feel like if you don't play them, the week you don't play them, they'll put on a 40-point scoreline and they'll be involved in a couple of tries each or have their hand involved in try assists or something like that. So that's tough. I'll probably stick to playing them most weeks, I think.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is, I don't know about you, but I've got all the three of the backline, 3 out of the 4, 3 out of the 5 backline players, so Tago, May, and then To'o. I benched Tago this week, and obviously didn't hurt me. But if you look back at his last even his last 8 scores, he's relatively safe. The lowest one I can see is a 38, and besides this week of a 34, that's the lowest you're going to get.
Yeah,
Obviously, with the two halves out, it impacts it. But if you're in a position like me where you had all three, are you playing all three, or are you trying to hedge your bets? Maybe
I'd
play two
maybe
and hedge
leave
one.
May of those three. Like obviously To'o didn't have a blinder either, but he still scored. I think at least 10 more points than. Oh no, To'o downdated pretty badly, didn't he? I think he had at least 40 or something prior to that. But yeah, he's gone down to 36. That's unfortunate. I'm in a similar position to you, mate. I've got three of them too, but mine are stuck all on the same side. I've got Kikau, To'o, and May. So yeah, I'm very nervous myself about that week to week. Um, I think, yeah, you probably find some weeks that you might want to leave one out, and I'd probably, in your case, lean towards May. And in my
Yep.
case, probably May or Kikau. I think I'd play Targo and To'o in your case. I think they're both standout plays. Because, yeah, Targo, as you point out, he hasn't really let people down. Even if he hasn't gone off, he hasn't let you down. But this week was kind of an exception.
Yeah, and I think this is the first game without them. We've got to be at least, how do I say, a bit understanding of the situation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they played all right to win against Canberra. It's going to improve. So if this is really the worst it's going to look, which I think it probably is, because obviously, this is their first game of first grade together. James Salmon's obviously played a little bit, and Sean's looked good in games without, but they haven't played together for any games this season.
I think Salmon's played every game for us, but only off the bench in a sort
Correct.
of interchange role. But yeah, very different to sort of a starting role at 5'8". But yeah, he was just sort of did a minimal sort of role, just sort of running and stuff like I expected. And I thought O'Sullivan was great. So yeah, good signs for the Panthers going forward, and that rest for the halves will probably do us wonders going into the finals.
Yep, I
Completely
completely
fresh.
agree. I
Mm.
mean, I don't know. I mean, if this is how they're looking without their two halves, I think Penrith are going back to back. My question is probably a bit targeted towards hooking options, and it goes back to Grant and Cook. But upside Coruscant, 59 with a try. If you have the trades, are you moving him on, or do you think without the big guns on the side there, he'll continue to take on a good role?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable to keep him. I just think without those guns there, he does get pretty crafty at dummy half, and I think he, will probably set one up most games himself, even if he doesn't cross for one. So I'd be comfortable with that. Harry, although him and Cookie both got in the 90s this week, I don't think they'll be scoring 90 every single week, but they'll still probably score more than currency. I just don't think it's worth the trade. You can probably chase some higher upside elsewhere in other positions and just cop that sort of 30 points and maybe make it up with 50 points by selling someone like a Taylor May's been scoring 30 or 40 points and getting that guy that's going to be a center winger that gets you 90, 100 points.
Yeah.
So identify the matchups and stuff. And that's probably still someone like Ronaldo, Malatalo, or Talakai if you don't own them, even though they're scoring terribly. They've got really, really good draw coming up. And even though this game was pretty good for them, I still think over the next 4 weeks, more often than not, they should probably go well.
Yep. Yep, I completely agree with you. From a Raiders side, Josh Papali 74 with a try. Adam Elliott continues to be probably the biggest surprise of the season with 62. So well done to people who own him. I suppose the one I want to talk about, probably the first one's Joe Tarpane. I think he's gone for a couple of weeks. I think you might have him for
It was a rib,
maybe.
wasn't it? He sort of just grabbed it
Yeah.
a bit. It was a weird little moment. I don't know what it was, but he sort of, it seemed to really bother him, and he's a pretty tough bloke. So ribs are awkward. And I even think when he does come back, it might be, his actual impact and how well he scores might be somewhat hindered by that rib as well. So
Yeah.
it's
And he's always
awkward.
been.
Maybe he's a sell even possibly if you've got the trades. If you like, I'd move him on. I don't know who I'd move him. If I'd move him onto a second rower, if maybe a Cam Murray or something like that. If you didn't have him, so there's
Yep.
not many great props. I mean, I perhaps the out and out, decent one apart from Tarpany, but other than outside of that, there's not really anyone else killing it. So
Yeah.
you probably want to look at second rower.
It's hard. I mean, I'd be tempted to wait, and if he's only out for a week, I'd wait and see, just because, yeah, as you said, the options in the front row forward are quite
Yeah, I don't know. I just reckon with the rib thing, if he was that no good to play, then I don't imagine it healing that well enough where he's going to be able to be taking like hits in it. Like he gets into the busy stuff, man. So
unless
I
they
can see
needle
him
him up,
holding
but
him.
we don't know.
Yeah, they're going to need him to try and get into the finals and stuff as well, aren't they? How far
Yeah.
out? Yeah, see, they're right on the cusp. They'll
Yep.
probably
They have a
will
better
needle
shot
him
than the
up, bro.
Seagulls do.
Yeah, that
You
he'll probably
know.
if he does miss one, they'll needle him up, and we'll just see how he goes, I guess. But I could lean towards selling him to a Cam Murray if I didn't have him. That I think Cam Murray is pretty juicy.
Yeah, and I mean their draw after that game is relatively good. They got the Dragons, Knights, Manly, and then the Tigers. So that's a relatively good matchup. I mean, if I'm Ricky, I'd be tempted to maybe rest him against. I mean, Raiders could win without him against both Dragons and Newcastle. The one which they might need him for is Manly because they're both going for a top 8 position. But yeah, it's interesting to see what you can do. Another one I want to talk about is someone that you owned. I think you might still own him, or you might have sold him. But Hudson Young with a 56, he was one which I
No,
was really looking at. If you
yeah,
had the points, probably the first question is, do you have him? And the
no.
second question is, if you didn't have him, looking at that draw, is he someone that you're looking at? 56 in a side which scores 6 points, pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's not bad. Probably not though. I did have him for 1 week, and it was over the buys. I was tossing up whether he was the big one that's annoyed me because I was tossing up whether to bring in him or Tarpany. If I'd brought in Tarpany, I would have held on to Tarpany and done quite well over a longer period. But yeah, not so much for me. Hudson Young's a pretty good footy player, but I don't think there's enough attacking opportunity for him compared to some of the other options that you could bring in. Although the draw is pretty good, he's probably a decent pod, but yeah, it doesn't feel right.
Mm. It's hard, very, very hard. I mean, yeah, again, the Raiders didn't play that great against Penrith, and they're undermanned Penrith. I know Penrith did do a better job than most people would
Yeah.
have thought, but you'd think they would put a better performance up than that, and that's what you're banking on with Hudson. Really, is those attacking stats. So, I mean, wait another week, and if the Raiders get back into form, I think you might look at bringing him in for that juicy Knights matchup. Another pod which you might think about, and massive shout here, Sean O'Sullivan. He is expensive. He's around 501k. He'll go up probably to around about 530k. But if you're really looking at someone in the halfback position, he scored 70, 80, 70, and now has backed that up. I believe with a 71. So you can go worse than bringing someone in like him. Bit of a pod in a halfback position where you've got DC and people that are underperforming. So if you've got the luxury of trades and you're looking for someone who can potentially spice you up, have a look at
Do like him.
Sullivan.
I was saying all week I preferred Sean O'Sutherland and Sam Walker over DCE and Hughes as options for the run home. So I think both of them have sort of proved this week they've outdone those two guys. Unfortunately, Hughes went down and probably would have scored a bit more. But yeah, I think Sean O'Sutherland's definitely an option for sure. He's going to be touching the ball a lot for the Panthers, considering Salmon's not that much of a playmaker.
Yeah. Yeah, and it appears like he's the dominant one there. Salmon is more of the running, the Luai kind of 5'8" there. And I mean, going from a Manly fan perspective, I think DC is trying to do a bit too much at the moment, and it's kind of undoing Manly a little bit. So we'll see whether he can get back into form. But yeah, you can definitely go worse than him. I think he's owned by 130 teams or something like that, or maybe 730. But 1%.
Who, DCE or Sean O'Sullivan?
No, Sean O'Sullivan. Sorry, he's owned by 733 teams, 1% owned. So you can do worse than him. They obviously have a difficult job. They do have the Warriors in round 24. If you're scoring this against the Raiders, I think you'll be safe for the rest of the season. He's not going to have the ceiling that most halfback players are going to have, like your Hugheses and your DCEs, but I think in that Penrith side, he's going to have a much stronger base.
Been punching out 70 to 80 every game he's played for Penrith in a starting role too, without the other boys there. So that's good signs.
Yeah, and does well for him. I'm glad he's getting back into form. He's had obviously a tough kind of last couple of years going back into the Broncos, and coming back down to Penrith, and then getting he got that good contract that he's got. I think from the Dolphins there. So well done to him, and he's playing fantastically without Cleary. So well done to him. Next game, Sharks and Dragons. Now, from a Sharks perspective, it wasn't really the battering that we thought when we were playing our assets. But if you captain Nico Hines, you still are not disappointed. I did captain Nico Hines this week,
Nice.
112. Looks fantastic, really, and had that try and not
first
too much
bloody
else.
3 minutes, he straight under the post and scored. I thought, here we go. Here we go. Yeah.
Only if you could back that up with maybe one or two more. But anyway, 112. You can't be too greedy about that. It's just when you see Latrell and Munster score 150s.
I think it seemed like a good matchup on paper, but then in hindsight, when you reflect on it, it was kind of a tough match because Dragons really needed to win that one. So they're always going to play, with some sort of ticker.
Yeah, and I mean, the Sharks still don't appear to be really. They're winning games and they're looking good, but
I don't seem to be playing. They're the best footy they could be playing. I know that, to be fair, they had two, Dykes filling at fullback for him, and I think they had another that young fella come in and what's his name,
Lockie Miller.
Those two kids remind me of each other. They both look kind of similar as well. I like their look. They look like tough kids, especially Dykes. He's looks exactly like his old man, except he's like that much taller. That'll be cool. But yeah, I think they're just not using their full squad week after week to the max that they could. Like Talakai out there on the left, he doesn't. I don't know what. It's not on him. I don't think. I just don't think you're giving him that same sort of ball that they were giving him in that half a footy where he just ripped and teared it up. That looks so easy. It looked like he should be able to do that every single week. A little bit, at least glimpses of that, but we're not seeing it, which is really frustrating.
Especially for the stat. If you look at the stats about him, I remember wearing obviously in the pod message group, and I think he went for 170 meters or something like that. Some ridiculous thing, and to score
2 weeks ago
that level
like
of points.
Yeah, I don't know what he scored this week, but yeah, he had big meters the week prior and not that high of a score. But yeah, but you'd think he'd be involved in more, but they're just not. I don't feel like. Yeah, maybe I just don't feel like they're setting enough for that left side in good ball period. But yeah, whatever. Hopefully they can work that out over the next 4 weeks when they've got some teams that they're going to put a cricket score on, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, he had 24 of his 25 points, minusing errors and stuff, and hit up 8. So I just don't think the tackle busts and stuff were there. But I mean, again, I'll see a lot of people selling him, and I'm kind of just like, they are going.
Oh yeah, that's a crazy sell now. Not with the draw that they've got. The draw they've got is just horrendous. Like, it's just so crazy. Like, I think they're playing the bottom 4 sides pretty much just for the run home.
So yeah, they got the Tigers next week. So I wouldn't sell him this week.
Tigers, Manly, which Manly's a little bit of a tougher one, but then Dogs and Knights. And Dogs have been more impressive of late, but still, you'd think that the Tigers would be able to. The Sharks should be able to do a good job on them.
Yeah, and does that same type of reasoning apply to Ronaldo Mulatalo? You just play him even though they've been under it a little bit?
Yeah. The tries are going to come for those. Surely they've got to come for that left side. Surely Talakai setting them up, crossing over for himself. And I think Mulatalo especially, he's got to have a couple of doubles and hat tricks. I reckon in the next 4 games, he'll have 2 hat tricks. That's my prediction. In the next 4 games, 2 hat tricks. Yeah. So maybe I reckon the Tigers game this next week and the Knights in the last round. So they're the 2 games I'd probably mark down as 2 hat trick games.
Yeah, and I'd also be looking out for the opposite side with Jesse Ramian. I just think when they click into gear, it's going to be. It's going to be hard to defend both sides, especially that left edge. But also when you've got Jesse Ramian on the right, the hog of all hogs, but he's a fantastic player. I think Those are the two that are going to really click into gear. I think obviously Mulatalo is going to benefit, but I think people are going to be talking about the centers, about Talakai and Ramian as the tough combo, and how do you defend both of them. We saw
Yeah, I feel
earlier in
like
the
they're
season.
particularly not using their centers well enough. Like they're beasts, and just with their ability to sort of get good early ball, tackle bust, offload, it just creates too much carnage in that. And then I just don't feel like they're getting enough good ball at this point.
No, and you saw, and the thing is, we've had evidence to show of how they can use their centers properly. You saw that game against Manly with Talakai, and they just used him perfectly. I mean, yes,
Mm.
Morgan Harper had a bad game, but also I think it was more Talakai was just out of this world, and they were putting him in the right situations. And
There was a
you
couple of
know,
games when Talakai was out or Origin
mm,
duties or whatever, and Ramian, they just went to his side and he ripped it up for like 2 weeks in a row when I think he scored a double and a hat trick himself and got 2 tons in a row. So yeah, they need to be using them better to be
yeah,
really taking advantage of, their opportunities, I think.
yep. Yep, I think you're 100% right with that one. I mean, Cam McInnes with a 50 is not really hurting you too much. If you're a Nikora owner and a massive pod with a 76, you're probably happy about that. I actually think they look better with Miller at fullback over Dykes, but again, they both look the same. They both kind of play the same, so
I
it
kind of
is what it
liked
is.
what I saw of that Dykes guy in little glimpses, like the way he sort of like he'd run to the line really, really fast and sort of step like to the side. He looked like he was
Mm.
difficult to deal with. I think he needs another opportunity, but yeah, that's tough because they both look good.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd be confident as a Sharks, and obviously Jakey boy is. Both of them look like if great injury cover. If
Mm.
some of their backs go down, they've got some good depth there, and going into finals, you never know when injuries are going to strike. So the fact that you've got some pretty good players in there that can kind of step into those positions, it's encouraging, and it means obviously your Sharks assets from a Supercoach perspective, you're less deterrent about that. A massive pod from halfback. I know Savs put a post up about him, was Benny Hunt. Didn't really play too fantastic with a 56. Do you agree with Savs' assessment that he's going to be one of the top halfbacks over the last 4 games of the round, or is this too
I
far out there?
honestly haven't really looked into it. Savs is having a great year, and I respect his opinion. So if he's identified it, then he probably will go all right for sure. He's not on my radar because I just don't have the options to move those sort of pieces around. But the thing I like about Ben Hunt is I think that he's definitely in the race for this Daily M award. So a part of me thinks that he's going to want to, put every sort of best foot forward and give himself every opportunity to try and snap that up. And I think it'll be weird seeing him get it in a side like that who have sort of, not even made the 8, but he has had a pretty good year of footy. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, look, I don't know. What's their run like? Let's have a look at their run.
Well, they've got a really good round 23 and round 24 with Titans and then Tigers. So I think that's probably
Hmm.
what Savs is looking at is
Yeah.
those 2 games, especially with a ceiling like Hunt has. He could well score tons in both matchups. So, and look,
Yeah, I don't
the
mind it.
Dragons are they fluctuate quite a bit in their form. I mean, they absolutely dominated the Manly side, and then the Sharks and no mean feat. So there is some potential there. So I do agree with Savs in terms of, he might be one of the key high scoring halfbacks over the last 4 rounds, but I think you're going to see the benefits a bit later.
I think Shawnee O'Sullivan and what's his face will still and Walker, Sammy
Sam
Walker.
Walker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll average more over the next period. But we'll see, yeah, I'm still like it as a pod option. I think I prefer still, even if Hughes was fit and available, just because Melbourne are just not really, really connect. Like, I mean, they played well this weekend, and it was more a lot of individual performances. But yeah, Benny Hunt's definitely a good option though.
Yeah.
Poddish. And I do love the fact that he's going for Daily M. That's just giving him the reason to sort of step out of his skin. So for that reason, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely good.
And I think the fact that, he's always been kind of taken a piss out of a little bit after the whole drop in the grand final type thing,
Hmm.
and being overpaid or whatever people think about that. I think it's good that, especially after his Origin performance, you know, I want to see him go well. He's always a Seems
Seems
to
like
be
a
like
good
a
dude
guy
as well, huh?
yeah. Like, from all the hate he gets, he's not really being a massive tosser about it. He's just sticking to
Yeah, he
his
just
game, and
goes about his business. Yeah.
which is good. So I love supporting those type of players. Brings us on to the Sunday games. 2 more games to go. We have the Cowboys and the Bulldogs, 28-14. I mean, solid performance from the Doggies, really. I mean, you never thought they'd kind of be in the game a little bit, or at least, not get towed out by a side like the Cowboys. But
Mm.
from a Cowboys perspective, again, we talked about before, it was really top-ended. So you had your Drinkwater with a 97, again, looked absolutely fantastic. You're an owner, aren't you? Or did you end up selling him?
Yeah, Drinkwater. I think we're just absolutely blessed with 5'8" at the moment. I mean,
Mm.
Burton, Drinkwater, Dylan Brown, and Munster. Like, there's 4 really massive standouts there, and even Cody Walker to an extent, if you pick him on good rounds. Um, just absolutely killing it. So it doesn't matter really who you've got. I think week after week they're sort of matching each other to some extent.
Yeah. And I suppose looking at someone like a Scotty Drinkwater, if I use my last trade, I might go Cody to Drinkwater. Do you reckon that's a good move, or do
Not
you reckon that?
necessarily, only because I liked Drinkwater, and the reason I wanted to bring him back, and I brought him back for 2 rounds ago. So I've had him for the last 3 weeks, this game and 2 other rounds, and they were sort of much better matchups. I'd say they were sort of Tigers, Dragons, and the Bulldogs. So I was like, oh, they're 3 juicy games. But he only did well in 2 out of those 3. He actually stunk it up in the first one in that round 19 when I captained him, unfortunately. One of my other falls from grace this year. But yeah, there's a few awkward games like the Roosters this week coming up. I think that's an awkward game. The Warriors, you'll put a good 100, go to close to a ton there. But Bunnies and Panthers, I think, be tough. The Bunnies will put on a pretty gritty performance, still trying to play for the finals as well. And yeah, I'd probably say that if you didn't have him, I'd go Matty Burton over Drinkwater.
Wow, huge call.
I like what drink. Yeah, I just think that Drinkwater. He's a nervous watch a lot of the time. Like the first half, he'd be like a lot of times he's in nothing, and you're like, oh no. You're checking his score, and it's like 15 or 11 at halftime or 9. I've had a couple of times, and then in the second half, you'll like score one and set one up, and then it's respectable or good. But Matty Burton seems to just be consistently just pumping out good scores, and he looks great. I like him.
Yeah, and I mean, 84 on
I'm
a losing
jealous I
side.
don't have him. I would probably even say Dewey to an extent, but you can have Dewey down in your centre wingers. But yeah, Matty Burton's just at another level this year. I think after playing Origin and having a good year at the back of winning a premiership with the Panthers, and then coming to a new side and being the man there and taking all the action. I mean, it's not been as I thought. Some of the scores weren't so great. 45 last week for Matty Burton, but then 126 the week before, 83 the week prior to that. There's another stinky 28 there, but then 76, 82, 97, 75, 78. Like these are killer scores. So yeah, I like Matty Burton.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
reckon he's a good option.
he's always going to get back into that type of form. He's a key cog in the Doggies' attack.
They got a lot to play for too. Even if it's not
Exactly.
necessarily for finals, like they want to finish really strong and have like a really good foundation to take into next year, because next year they might look a lot more promising with the likes of it's Reed Marnie and Kikau going there. I think that left edge will be pretty aggressive, having Kikau as a threat and then being able to pump it out the back to the Fox. And yeah, I like a lot of what they're doing. And on Shoop, that shop, he's a gun. He's like a
Sloop.
young beast. Yeah, love him.
Yeah, and Karaz too. I mean, it's if I'm a Doggies fan, I'm a bit excited about what's to come.
Yeah, I think they might be my
And I think
second side next year. Hoping to see they go well.
I think Doggies or Tigers are everyone's second side. You always want to see those teams where they've had a massive, tough run of years kind of come back in and be established. And I think everyone remembers back in the day when the Doggies were and the Tigers were amazing size, and the league was better. So it's always good. And I mean, Burton coming up against the Warriors next week is juiciest
Oh,
matchup as you can get. I'd be looking at VC or a C on him. I just reckon, he's a player who, he's shown with that at 126 against the Titans and those worse matchups, he can really click into gear. So if you're an owner of
yeah.
him, I know he's only in 10% of teams, but look at that because he could really be a difference maker in that position.
Yeah, I think he's super juicy for the run home. He's a bit pricey, 40 something K, and with a BE this week of 55, he's going to go up even more. But this time of the year, you don't really worry about the price, how much you're not going to worry about losing money from him or anything, because in 4 weeks' time, it's all done and dusted. So, yeah.
Finals time in 4 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Real finals, not just our Supercoach fantasy finals.
Yeah. It's funny how there is a bit of sadness in the first week of finals when Supercoach isn't on, but
Yeah, I'm going to miss it. I think I need a rest from it, but also I'm going to miss it terribly as well.
yeah, I think that's what all Supercoaches feel. They say, "Oh, can this season just be over?" And then once the season's over, they just want the next season to start. So, good to at least enjoy it while we can. I mean, other performances. Let's just talk quickly about, the combination of Reese. Sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, bring up Nanai. Obviously, he was a bit of a letdown for people who jumped on at a big price.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes towards Reece Robson too. I believe. I mean, I didn't watch this game; I was still sleeping. But I believe Reece Robson, that was a 56 with a try.
I thought he had a
I'm
good
not
game. I think he set one up as well, Reece Robson, or maybe. Okay, yeah, that's not. Yeah, he didn't score one. He set one up.
set
Yeah,
one up. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean that's not really what you look. I mean, Reece Robson was scoring 55s for fun without a try, and to get a try assist there and score
It's more than
56, I'm a
double
little
my
bit.
read Marnie, but yeah, I understand it's not what you want. Yeah, you'd prefer to be having a Cookies 90 or a Grant's 90 for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
and,
think
and
at
from a
this time of
Val,
the year, you probably, if you've got one trade left or something like most people have, or that are, up the top sort of chasing it down, I just feel like you couldn't waste it on upgrading your last one to a hooker, especially with the risk of injury working around the corner.
yeah, it's a bit, it's not going to really hurt you too much, but obviously
To
not
trust your
not
guy
what you
and
think.
fingers crossed your guy goes okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
um,
been pretty good for the most. The only awkward thing for him is that obviously what's his Granville is leaning on the bench and comes on. And I don't know if he spelled him today or not, to be honest, but I think they might have both played together. But it is awkward for him now with Hammer playing on the wing, filling in for Felt.
yeah, but I mean, I think this probably goes for Holmes. Obviously, scored a 35, and Nano with a 32. Those scores are gonna come just because they appear to spread their attack quite broad. I mean, obviously today
Mm.
was it was a did and drinky game, but I wouldn't be too concerned about Val or Nanai. You know that Nanai is that player who needs those attacking stats. Same with Val. And I think I think I'd be more confident with Val over Nanai just because it's shown that Val only needs like one real attacking play to get in the 70s. I mean, he was on 30-ish
Yeah.
prior to that try last week and still scored well. Um, I think they're both holds because it's a luxury to sell them, but I wouldn't be too concerned. You knew if you brought in Nanai this week that was the way it was going to go. Like he either scores oodles or he doesn't score really much at all, and his base isn't too fantastic. But the Cowboys know how to use these players. Like Val will continue to score well. Nanai will score well in the end of the rounds. They're just too good of a side to have those two being back watchers for the rest of the season. Yeah. Obviously we had Karaz with a 35, not fantastic, but I'd be confident with him. But besides that, I don't think there's too much to talk to. The one I'm looking at maybe, and this is kind of one which I shouted last week, is if you really need a hooker, looking at someone like Ruben Cotter coming back might be a good shout once he, maybe a week, maybe not this week, the week after. Just, he's safe, gets that solid base, and I think into finals he'll really click into gear. So that's kind of
They
what
were
I'm
a lot
looking
better
for.
when he was on the field today as well. So, yeah, I can see them giving him more minutes going forward now. as well after
Yeah.
he sort of eased him back after 2 games.
Yeah, and 8% owned too. You'd say probably 4% of those
Wow.
half of those are zombie teams that owned him earlier on
Yeah.
in the season.
Yeah.
So again, a bit of a pod there. But that brings us into our last match of the week. It was a big one for me as a Dewey owner. Bit disappointing, but still an exciting game at the very end. I think it was a game of who could not give the other side the win rather than who wanted it.
Kelma Tulagi, top scorer.
Yep, future Manly
The
player. I'm
Tigers.
very excited for him to come. I mean, can't wait for him. Ola Kawatu on one edge and him on the other. Oof.
Yeah, he does
Cannot
look
wait.
good, doesn't he? He's just been disappointing in Supercoach all year. Just sort of seemed like he copped a HIA nearly every second week or come off for some reason. But yeah, looks like a definite good option going forward, I think.
Yeah. I mean, next year he might be one that I'll start with, depending on his price, just because I think he'll be utilised very well on the Manly side. But for this year, we'll see how it goes. I suppose the key ones from the Tigers, and I own both of them. Joe Offengawi with a 66. He'll update to around mid-70s. I think he's really safe in the front row position. He's kind of one of the reasons I didn't go Tapane was, Offengawi was safe enough, and I knew I had Max King on the bench if he really needed to spell. So he's looking quite good. I suppose the people that went Dewey, one of them being me, I know Tigers aren't a great side, but he's literally if he doesn't play well, they don't win. So he has to carry them in all games. And even today, he's pretty much in everything. They had a move down the right hand side, I think, in the second half where I think Peachy dropped it, but that could have easily been a Dewey kind of play if he caught up with the ball well enough, and just appears to be in the thick of it. I also think he updates to around 60s, but I wouldn't be concerned really if you brought in Dewey this week. I just think that he's just going to find a way to get points, and
I feel they could have used him better this game as well. I felt when they were down in that red zone and they had good attacking balls so many times, they sort of went to the left side and to Jock Madden. Whereas I just felt like when you give the ball to Dewey, something just happens around him, and they just seem to go sometimes the whole set without letting him touch the ball.
Yeah, and also running him on the fourth too. He's a great that try that they scored was because of his kicks, and they ran him. I think in the second half, in 2 of the last 3 sets, they gave the ball to him on the fourth and expecting him to run. And it's I understand that, but fifth tackle option, you want the ball into his hands in the last, and I think they'll look at that and really change that.
I think this game is particularly frustrating for Dewey owners because they've marked these people who brought him in and probably brought him in this week. So he's a new thing for your side. You're really hoping to get that ton out of him at least, and maybe a little bit more against the Knights. And because it is that Knights that you've marked as, the super easy game, this is where you've really brought him in for this round, and you think, you'll probably do well in the other rounds as well. But it's frustrating, to have him sort of only get a 50, but. He's a good thing.
Yeah. And same thing happened with the Sharkies against the Dragons. So
it was 120 or something against Brisbane and only 50 against the Knights. Footy's hard to predict sometimes, huh?
Yeah, and the Tigers are hard to predict too. They play incredibly well against Broncos, potentially a top 4 side, and they're playing routine really poor against Knights, who, but I think they'll also, it's kind of you don't know what you're going to get, just hold on to the guy, and you never know how they're going to play against the Sharks next week. I wouldn't be surprised if they win that game. It's just nothing surprises me, but at least they appear to be putting some previous to the week. They put some good performances together, so hopefully they return back to their form. On the Knight side, Anari Twala with an 81, Texo with 71, Dane Gagai with a 69. I mean, the less we talk about the Knights, the better, but good to see Gagai, I suppose.
Congratulations on their win this round.
Yes, congratulations. And congratulations to Adam O'Brien. He looked very
stressed at times.
Yeah, but it's good to see him win. I mean, I think
he gave the furniture a bit of a hiding at one point.
Yeah, look that table. Very sore. There's a lot of bruises in that table after the game today. But anyway, Adam O'Brien's a happy man, and obviously I think he gets to keep his job for
at least another week
in the future. At least another week, yeah. Yeah, it sucks in NRL land, and it shows you why being a head coach, man, They earn every single buck that they get. Every single buck. So it brings us on to questions. We've only really got a couple today, but let's just hit it off. It's a long episode, so let's just hit off with one final question. And this kind of gets us onto strategy. So Amar says, I looped Munster with an AE 15 and the player I dropped got 29. Had the C on Latrell but got cold feet. How do we feel about the decision, lads? Was it the right one to loop Munster? I'll hand that one over
I
to
was
you.
going to captain Latrell myself if Munster didn't go well. And although mathematically you would have got a little bit better points by just riding it with Latrell, you've got to take those points on the board when that 140 comes around. Not looping it's just crazy. I mean, you could be very unlucky and, have someone like, it could have been like Tarpany, it could have been Tarpany, could have been your captain. Not saying you probably would have captained Tarpany, but he's in like him going down or Hughes going down. If your captain goes down injured and early, or like for my sake, Cleary last week, and you get your cop before, it's terrible. So yeah, the saying is, two bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So yeah, you take the points. So that was a good decision, even though it didn't necessarily score as well as you would have liked it to have scored. Because I think it probably would have played out that 150. It depends who you dropped as your AE, who you left out. My AE wasn't that would have come in. That did come in, scored 19, and the guy I was going to play was not going to score that much more anyway, so it didn't really matter.
I think you're completely right about it.
You take it.
You take the points that are on the board. It's going to happen the opposite way around to you. You're going to take the captain and they're going to score 20 and you're going to be sitting there going, I should have taken the points. So I think more often than not, you take the VC points. That's why we have the loop in place. And I think if it wouldn't have hurt you too much, like you're still getting a solid score as a loop captain. So isn't too poor. So Aman, head up. I know you're not an overall player, but that probably ends up with a good score then. And our last question from Metalhead Smurf says, Latrell coming off with 20 to go, it may have turned out different. Yeah, as we said, could have been 200 points, but we can't be too greedy as super coaches. We've kind of got to go on and appreciate the 150, which is always very, very, very fascinating. Then we've got Mr. Blue Smurf. Well done.
Papa
Metalhead Smurf, Blue Smurf. There's
I'm a big fan of Papa, man. Big Papa guy myself.
Yeah, Papa's a solid one. But hey, look,
he's got experience, you know what I mean, Papa? He's got a lot of experience.
Yeah.
He's seen
good
things.
Man too. Oh, how good. Well,
thanks
for logging
shenanigans up, huh?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Well, thank you so much, Jimmy, for jumping on. It's good to see you, and I'm sure we'll kick
brother.
back into gear for this week. And best of luck. I'll catch you on potentially Tuesday, and we'll see how we go.
Yeah, keep ripping up London, mate. Make a name for yourself out there.
I'll try to, mate. I'll try to. All right, take care, everyone. Hope you have a fantastic Supercoach week, and enjoy. Safe travels and safe week at work for everyone. All right, take care.